Imagine you're presenting the latest project update to your leadership team. Everything looks good, the roadmap is on track, engineering is making progress, the launch date is still achievable. You ask the room, any concerns? Silence. So you move on. A few weeks later, the launch date starts slipping. Then you discover that engineering has been worried about the deadline for months. Customer success knew customers weren't ready. And one of your most important stakeholders had serious concerns about the strategy, but never raised them. So here is the uncomfortable question. If nobody tells you there's a problem, does that mean there isn't one? Not necessarily. It might mean that people don't feel safe telling you. And this is where one of the most important ideas in workplace psychology comes in: psychological safety. What is psychological safety? Well, the concept was developed extensively by Harvard Business School professor Amy Edmondson, who has spent decades researching teams and organizations. Her definition is wonderfully simple. Psychological safety is a shared belief that a team is safe for interpersonal risk taking. In other words, can I say, I don't understand this? Can I say, I think this is a bad idea? Can I admit I made a mistake? Can I tell the most senior person in the room, I don't think the deadline is realistic, without worrying that I'll be punished, humiliated, or labeled as difficult? That's psychological safety. And it's incredibly important for products and project managers because product and project management are basically professions built around uncertainty. You don't know exactly what customers want, you don't know exactly what the market will do, you don't know whether your roadmap will work, and you certainly don't know everything yourself. So you need people around you who are willing to tell you when you're wrong. Here's where this gets interesting. Imagine two teams, both have a meeting, both teams have the same project, both have the same deadline, and both have the same technical problem. In team A, the product manager says, I think we can still make the launch date. Everyone nods. Nobody says anything, the meeting ends. In team B, someone says, I'm not convinced we can make that date. Another person says, I've actually been worried about this for a couple of weeks. Someone else says, our customers aren't ready for this launch yet. Team B sounds like it's in trouble, but which team would you rather manage? I'd choose Team B because Team B knows it's in trouble and now they can do something about it. Team A has something much more dangerous, and that is false confidence. This became particularly famous because of research conducted by Google. Google wanted to understand what made some of the teams more effective than others. They called it Project Aristotle. They looked at a huge range of factors: who was on the team, how senior they were, how often they met, how they communicated, even things like whether the team was co located. And one of the strongest factors they identified was psychological safety. The highest performing teams weren't necessarily the teams with the most talented individuals, they were teams where people felt able to speak up. That distinction is incredibly important because we sometimes think great teams are teams where everyone gets along, but that's not true. A great team might actually be a team where people disagree a lot. The difference is that disagreement doesn't become personal. People can challenge the idea without feeling that they are challenging the person. Here's a little experiment. Think about the last important meeting you ran. Now imagine that immediately after the meeting, you could follow every person individually to the coffee machine and you ask them, what did you really think about that decision? Would you get exactly the same answers? If you would, you probably have a psychologically safe environment, but if the answers suddenly become very different, that's a warning sign because your meeting might not capture disagreement. It might just be capturing public agreement. And this is where psychological safety connects directly to something we've already talked about on this channel, the Abilene paradox. People can agree publicly with a decision they privately disagree with. Psychological safety is one of the things that determines whether those private concerns ever make it into the room. So, how do you create psychological safety? The first thing is surprisingly simple: admit when you don't know something. As a product or project manager, you might feel that you need to have the answers. You don't. Try saying, I'm not sure, or I may be missing something here, or I'd like to hear what engineering thinks before we decide. You're demonstrating that uncertainty isn't dangerous, and that gives other people permission to admit their own uncertainty. Second, reward people who raise problems. Imagine somebody tells you, I think we're going to miss this deadline. You can respond, why didn't you tell me sooner? That question might be understandable, but the rest of the team hears, don't bring me bad news. A better response might be, thank you for flagging it. What are you seeing? You can deal with the problem afterwards. First, make sure people keep bringing you problems. And here is perhaps the most important one. Don't confuse psychological safety with being nice. Psychological safety doesn't mean avoiding difficult conversation. It means making difficult conversations possible. A psychologically safe team can say, I disagree. That's not going to work. We've made a mistake. I don't understand the strategy. I think the customer research contradicts our assumption. And then they can have the conversation. That's not dysfunction. That's how good decisions get made. So the next time you run a stakeholder meeting and everyone says, looks good, makes sense, no concerns from me, don't automatically assume you've achieved alignment. Ask yourself, did we achieve agreement or did we simply make disagreement uncomfortable? Because there's a huge difference. Your job as a product or project manager is to create an environment where people feel safe enough to tell you when you're wrong. Because the risk isn't that somebody challenges your ideas, the real risk is that they don't. And you only discover what they really thought after the decision has already become expensive. That's psychological safety. And in product management, it might be one of the most valuable things you can build that never appears on your roadmap. Thanks for watching. If you're interested in workplace psychology, please subscribe and I will see you in the next one.